Welcome to you all. This is something which we started quite a while ago and then stopped, and I really think it's important to keep it going. So I'm going to try to have something like this weekly, because it really seems important to permit us to talk to each other and also get to know each other a little better this way. Today, the agenda is here. I'm going to start off talking about winning entanglements. I will make that relatively brief, but I do want you to understand this since it gets talked about a lot. Plus, many of you may want to join. And then John will talk about CAS, the status of that. That's very exciting and just getting started. It's been going for a while with one group, but we're starting a bunch of other groups. And then we have Carlos and Mark here on our discussion group. They and others, including myself, John, and others, have been talking about starting a live group and doing predictions live. So that'll be very interesting. And then if we have time, and I think we will, but we'll see how it goes, there was interest in having a discussion on free will and predeterminism and time. So we'll get into that. I do want to limit these to 2 hours so everybody, including myself, can plan the rest of their day. And so that's sort of the time frame we have here. And I just got today, and I just wanted to share this because I thought it was so cool, from Igor, on the following quote he put together from Star Trek. "Consciousness, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the intuitive mind. Its continuing mission to explore strange new targets, seek out new experiences and new personal improvements, to boldly go where no man has gone before." So that's another way of kind of saying what we're about here. So I kind of like that. I like that. Okay, let me start. Winning entanglements, and if I'm not clear on something, feel free to chime in. But I'm making this simple. It's gotten a reputation among some people as maybe being more than is necessary or too complicated, but it really isn't. The only real complication is that there are two coordinates, which gives us the ability for those two to support each other. We see it as a way of minimizing noise, if you will, getting a higher signal-to-noise ratio with two coordinates. But the first step is you'll get the tasking with those two coordinates. The second step, and this is something which you either like or you don't like, it does have self-analysis and judging. So some people like that, some people don't. If you don't like it, WE is not for you in its current form. Because step 2 is simply analysis and judging of your two transcripts against the two potential targets. And that's something which is a bit different because they will both turn out to be targets. The analysis has you kind of match which potential target goes with which one of your coordinates. But one coordinate goes with only one target. And then step 3 is you get the outcome and you do your feedback sessions. And as always, we believe the feedback session is extremely important, and that's a time when you get to learn and improve your own precognitive abilities. Now, it's all online, and it's actually really quite easy because you will get in the mail as a viewer an email like this, which will define the event, when it starts, basically it tells you when your transcripts are due, and then you click this link. Up comes on the internet now this where the webinar workshop, this would be as if I were doing it on a webinar workshop, which in fact we've done in the past. And all you do is put in your email, so that's the second step in terms of the tasking, which is step one. And then the third step, and this is a simplified version now. I used to have a lot of options, and I think that's what confused people. I've decided to take all those options away. At this point, what will show up is a screen like this. You simply have your queue, and you have your two tasks. So you're given both tasks with your two coordinates. You go away, you do your two transcripts. We recommend, a break in between, one day, one the next day, however you want to do it. Just make sure you feel good about it. I'm a great believer in don't do it because you feel you have to. Do it when you feel you're ready to do a good remote viewing session that you'll enjoy. That'll benefit you. And then you simply upload it. All of us, by now, know how to either take a picture or have a scanner. One way or another, you get it on your computer, and then you browse each of the transcripts. So that's the first step. Now, the reason for that is it becomes part of the database, but more importantly, in the short term, it's important because I then get to look at it. So here is where you're going to begin to do self-analysis and judging. But while you're doing your judging, at some point in time, I now have the ability to do independent judging. And we get to talk about that. We get to learn about each other. I send you emails. Hey, how come you did this? How come you did that? And it's just a valuable thing for me to be able to have access to your transcripts as well. So there's another person judging it out there. So this then would be one of the potential targets. And what you do here, this is what we call the winning side target or the winning wild card. That goes back historically. Anyway, at the same time, while this comes up, I've emailed you the other potential target. We call these photo sites because they also, your consciousness goes there and picks up the most verifiable information. But you can also pick up sounds. You can pick up the fact that there's action, where if you just look at it as a still picture, you don't get that. Now, what you do now is judge. So the first thing you would do is you now have your two transcripts in front of you. You've sent them to me as well. I have access to this picture as well. But you, on this screen, would then judge your two transcripts and simply rank them using the TARG scale, which you could click on here and see again if you need to be reminded. And you would put in the two coordinates, the two confidence rankings for each of your coordinates. Okay, so you've seen that picture. Now in your email, notice this is an email sent to you, you will have your other target. Now, I could have put it on the website, but I purposely separated them, working to make it very clear that there are two different coordinates, two different targets. So this is what we call the other target, and you now would simply rank the other target, again, based on the same two transcripts, one associated with this coordinate, one associated with this coordinate. And in this example, I've got it as a 5 and a 3. So the other target corresponds to one side of the wager, or in this case, we did a Forex in this example. This is the winning side of the wager or trade. And here, all that's known to you is that they're called side 1 and side 2. Well, side 1 is always associated with coordinate 1. Side 2 is always associated with coordinate 2. So in this case, notice for the winning side, the WWC, what we call the winning side, which is going to be whatever it turns out to be, but in this case, you're predicting that the winning side is going to be associated with 888, 328, and coordinate 2 because you got a 4. Now the other side is associated, you gave it a 5, which is really terrific because the other side, if this turns out to be up, this would be down. You want these to be opposite. So this, in fact, is reinforcement for this. And this is why you get a better signal-to-noise kind of information. And then you make a personal prediction. In this case, it's clearly side 2. And I ranked this 5 and this 4, so I gave together a 5.5 or even higher since they reinforced each other. And then there's an opportunity to put in notes here. Now, the next thing that happens, and today, and I thought I put it here, but obviously it isn't, it turns out we had a very nice example of that with Teresa, and I hope you're going to post that, Teresa. Oh yeah, here it is. I'm sorry. It's right here. This is something which was done by Teresa today, where in the next thing that happens is a group prediction, okay? The group prediction, and this is Teresa's from the Pegasus group, the group prediction now tells you based on the group whether or not it was up or down. In this case, for a Forex trade, it was up, which turned out to be side 2. That association was made by the computer and wasn't even known until I went in and did judging. So that was blind to everybody. These numbers here give you the information. In her case, the reason it was side 2 was because she gave side 2 a 4.5 for side 2 here, which turned out to be up. And you see, you don't really have to understand all these numbers, but I do, and Teresa did. And these are her CRs, which are shared with everybody in the group. There was a second person that also made a prediction. Notice they gave a 3.5 as well for side 2. So that's another level of corroboration between two people. And then over here are the CRs for the other target. And notice how they are opposite, one here and one here and one here and one here. The opposite ones, namely side 1, are the other. So this was very strong corroboration by both of the viewers, and indeed we got a hit. So that's the next thing that happens, is you get in your email both everybody in the group and everybody in the app email group, the active viewers, so they get a copy of this. Now this one was very easy with double corroboration from each of the viewers, and it turned out to be a very nice hit. And then the final step is feedback. You'll get an email which will give you a link. It'll also give you the outcome. So the outcome is here. And then you get a link which gives you the winning side target first. Notice it's the same one we got before, but what you know now is it's associated with up, and you know which coordinate. So you go to that transcript associated with that coordinate, you do your feedback session, and you put in your notes here. These notes will become available to you, and in fact already are in a crude fashion, but we're improving that. So you'll be able to look through your notes and search them and learn from your own experiences. That's the idea here. We is intended to be not only a good wagering device, but a way to learn and get better. And here then is for the other side, this is your other feedback target for this coordinate. One specific feedback for each coordinate. So it's almost like two binary ARVs, if you will. And here's where the text goes. So that's the third stage. So that's WE, and I believe it's very straightforward and simple to do. It does have at its core the fact that there are two tasks and two coordinates. Otherwise, it's very straightforward. Okay, questions, comments? Okay, let's, and that's because it's so simple everybody understood it, right?
So, Marty. Marty?
Yeah?
This is Scott.
Hi, Scott.
Thanks for changing the programming and making it even simpler and easier for people to use.
Right. Good. You're welcome. And I might say, if anybody's interested in becoming a general manager for this kind of group, that's terrific too. Which then leads me into John, who has another style. And App is always trying to make fits with different kinds of styles, including live webinar, which we'll get to next. But now let's go do CAS. And John, I'll turn the screen over to you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, hi everybody. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, hello John, yes.
Hi.
Screen looks good.
Okay, good.
It does,
So
yes.
this is just the rough outline for the CAS report. A few people I think haven't seen CAS, what it is, so I'll show a few slides from the PowerPoint I gave in Vegas in June. And then these are the CAS groups that we have here that are existing or pending, and then we can have discussion and questions. Just to keep, in case people have to leave, let's just look at these CAS groups for a minute here. So CAS Oak is the group that I've run 3 trials, A, B, and C, and I'll start D. Igor has run the Creatorum group for 1 series. Chris, who's here, can report on his group, which just started. Nancy got back to me yesterday. She's been away and thought she would be here, but I'm not sure if she'll join in time to talk about Sublime Group, which will start a series in September or so. And Scott's here and can talk about his group if he likes to. So let's take a look at some of the basics of CAS for those that haven't seen it before.
Muted. Unmuted.
It was developed by Ed May and the Cognitive Sciences Laboratory. Here's a picture of Ed May. He's had a lot of publications. Here's some of his laboratory personnel. They have their own website, of course. So why are we so interested in CAS? Well, because regular sports folks who have professional information get that kind of percentage, 50 to 55% maximum. Our rate's around 60 to 65. But CAS, computer-assisted scoring, is closer to, well, 83% here for this one set of investments, 90% in other instances. It's been very successful, although it has a lot of passive.
Muted.
It has several components, which are a little complex to load, and Scott and Igor and Lauer have helped us get those components up and running, and Alexis was very generous too in that way. Some of the basics of CAS, it's associative remote viewing binary. It uses a set of 300 photos with a large change of entropy, and we won't have time, to go into all the details, but just to give those not familiar at all with it, sort of an overview of what we're trying to do. There are 24 cognitive categories that are used to code or score the viewer's sessions. We don't talk about those categories because viewers are not supposed to know what those categories are. Then the computer compares decoded response, which are human enters, with previously established profiles of 2 randomly chosen photos. Then a figure of merit is assigned based on reliability and the accuracy. And if the figure of merit exceeds 0.4519, which someone may remember either 2 or 3 standard deviations, I guess, away from the mean, then we can make a call or a pick. A lot of times we don't get that, so we have to do a pass. Here's sort of the nitty-gritty of it. The entropy is measured in these lower images here, and the top image is what the entropy is measured of, the pyramid in one case and the bridge in the other. What else? The target pool was carefully constructed, about 300 different photos that are in a bunch of different categories, and 6 people worked. They developed this software over about 30 years, which is another reason to use it, also because it's been so successful. The figure of merit is established by the computer automatically. Maybe I'll show this example here. Here's an example of a session that I did when Ed May was putting the software on my computer. He said, that's all he said, describe the photo I'll be showing you. I drew very briefly. I said, do you want some more? He said, sure. What do you see from the top of the arches? And from 1,000 feet up, he scored it with the response fuzzy set analysis form. And it came out with a high figure of merit, 0.4626, which was bettable. So you can see you can do a quick session. That's what Ed May and Joe McMonagle highly recommend. Some people do longer sessions. I know Deborah's here. She does some longer ones and sort of boils them down, I guess. And that works too for some people. But in general, Joe and Ed prefer that you do short sessions. I'm not going to go into all that. So that's pretty much basically the a 2-minute intro to CAS. Let's look at the some of the series now. As I said, the first series was run last fall. We had 4 hits, 0 misses, 16 passes. That was considered quite successful. Then I did a solo series to see if that would work too, since if a solo series could be done, we could have a lot of people doing them. That did not work. 0 hits, 1 miss, 9 passes. Just concluded series C, 2 hits, 2 misses, 16 passes. However, I'll give you the end result here in case, again, people have to leave or whatever. So the results of the trial series by Kassock and Protorum, and Igor's not here, but he had 1 miss also, are 7 hits, 4 misses, and 39 passes. But all 4 misses stem from either what I call sparse coding, which we are now aware of and can avoid, or B, making a prediction based on a figure of merit that does not reach the cutoff, which is 0.4519. So what is sparse coding? I'll give you an example. So here's a session that Gary gave me in and you can see there isn't much here. So without saying what the categories are, suppose the category was mammals. It's not an actual CAS category, but suppose it was mammals, and all Gary said was male and taller than 2 feet. Those are very general and could apply to all kinds of mammals. Well, that's analogous to what happens with sparse coding. You don't have enough data that represents an outdoor scene, and all the photos, remember, are outdoor scenes, either cityscapes or combination. Oops. So that's one thing that the CAS group coordinators can discuss about what you can tell the viewers about producing that kind of data. So that's an example of sparse coding. I'm pretty sure, and I think Igor is too, that if we get rid of sparse coding, we won't have those misses, plus not making predictions unless you have a figure of merit of 0.4519. However, there are different CAS groups, and managers or coordinators can run them the way they want to. It's been my view that we should have at least one group that runs them as closely as possible to Ed May's, which is what the CAS Oak series has been doing. And others may want to change variables. For example, I think Igor and I think Chris too have made at least one prediction when the figure of merit was not 0.4519. And there are other variables that they might want to take a look at too. So again, here's some of the stats. The hits altogether, open A and C. I've left out B because that was just a pilot trial. That was solo. That wasn't the way Ed May runs his, but he does run them with groups, one viewer at a time. Each viewer has their own day in the way I run it. And there's some possible indicators that we need more data for, whether the hit difference, for example, if it was a hit, if the higher figure of merit was a hit, and the hit difference was greater than 0.2, 61% of the time we would have had a hit. So we're going to keep track of all of these figures, including the absolute difference. It's much higher for hits than for passes, but we have very few in our sample. We don't have, we have, I guess, 40 events, 50 counting Igor's, which is enough to be statistically significant. As I understand it, usually it's 25 or 30. So I also keep the results in a big Excel sheet like this, and I've asked other group coordinators for CAS to do the same so we can have uniformity and give it to, I guess Michelle is collecting all the data, and Alexis and Scott and Marty. That was the A and the C. So that's kind of it for a overview of some of the results of the CAS Oak groups. And let's, for Creatorum, let's take a quick look at that. I say Igor's not here, but he did write up some documents. Where's his stuff here? He calls it Creatorum because he's from Croatia. So here's his data. And as I say, he had 2 misses, 1 hit. Even though it wasn't at 0.4519, the figure of merit did not achieve 0.4519, but he made a prediction that it was a hit. He decided to look at both photos afterwards, which is not part of the basic CAS protocol. And whether that affected his results, I'm not sure, but it's not something I'm going to do, and I don't recommend other CAS organizers do it, because that's really part of the basic protocol, is that the coordinator or tasker never sees the second photo, nor does the viewer. The computer, quote unquote, sees it, but nobody else. And that's supposedly what prevents feedback loops that Joe and Ed have talked about repeatedly. So that's that. So maybe we can turn to Chris, and we can have questions afterwards, okay, after we finish these reports. And Chris, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good. Do you want to say something about your update now?
Yeah. Well, Innate does not have much data. We've had 4 trials to date. We've had 0 hits, 1 miss, and 3 passes. And on that one miss that we took a position on, it was my decision. It was under the figure of merit threshold, but I felt that it was convincing enough. And I'm not really, as I feel my way through everything, I'm not really adhering to that number, because I feel that there is such a learning curve with regards to the coding steps. There's a lot of inference that's involved. There's a lot of interpretation, very subjective interpretation, as well as intuition that's required on how to code. And without getting into too much detail, because I don't want to have too many people that are not managing these groups to be too privy to the inner workings of the protocol, which wouldn't serve anyone well. Is that there's issues that really have to be clarified, with regards to the coding. That's the only thing I do want to say. So it is a learning curve. I do embrace the structure of the program, and I think everybody has to have their their own synergy with their viewers and get a handle on it. So I'll be a little more conservative going forward, but at the same time, I'm still feeling my way through. So the next meeting we have, I'll present the data, but I just thought it was just a little too minimal at this point. But 013 is our status right now.
Yeah, and we're going to have a CAS coordinators webinar in the near future. I think that's a great idea to discuss this coding, because that is the main subjective part of it. You know, the computer does the rest after the viewer has submitted his quote-unquote or her subjective session, but then the coding is a little tricky. And Ed and Joe said there is a learning curve to the coding, and Joe said he thinks we'll be all right. We just need to work at it a little bit. So, Chris, you have anything else?
Yeah, John, I just wanted to ask, I faded out there for a while. I had a connectivity problem. But one of the questions I had, and I'll address it now, is
Unmuted.
level, do the viewers who are viewing within the CAS protocol need to be primed in terms of how to do transcript? Because there's a lot of data that I'm generally used to seeing that is irrelevant in terms of CAS, and there are other things that I'm looking for. So how, if you want to address this now, that is, you know, how do we prime or cue the viewers to,
Right.
you know, to meet that protocol in a better way?
Well, I put some of that into the document I sent to the CAS coordinators, which you know, has all the details of what I've understood from Ed and Joe and our own experience. But I think it's important to stress a couple of things. One is that it's the visually impacting part of the session that we're scoring. In other words, it could have a small red box or something, or house in the session, but it could stand out visually if that were true in the photo. So visually impacting is a factor I hadn't given enough consideration to, and you can try to discern that from the session. And if the viewer is aware of that we're going to look for visually impacting stuff, they can perhaps accentuate it or make it clear. The other thing I realize is that a lot of viewers are used to submitting, as you say, data that colors, for example, and stuff that doesn't necessarily help the coder very much. So I keep stressing, again, that these are all outdoor scenes, which we're supposed to tell the viewers that they're all outdoor scenes, that there's no transportation, there's no people in them of note. Stressing to the viewer that there are outdoor scenes, either cityscapes or landscapes, and try to get something along those lines, and that'll help the coder and eventually avoid sparse coding and hopefully get more figures of merit about 0.4517.
You know,
I also want to say one other thing, if I may. The targets are binary in and of themselves, and I think well, I'll just say that without getting into too much detail. What CAS, I feel, is challenging us to do as viewers and as coders is to go deeper into the target and get more specific, more detail, get a deeper connection. That's my takeaway with CAS in this very, very early stage, because you know, on the surface there are many things that are very similar, and the alternate targets are binary in essence, but we need to go beyond the essence and get a strong connection.
Okay, I'm not quite sure I grasp that, but you want to say
Well, just getting
more
more detail about the target, other than, you know, what its gestalt is.
from the viewers, what we need as coders, you mean?
Yes.
Right. Yeah, I agree completely with that. If you're finished, Chris, for the moment, we can ask Scott if he has anything to say about his group.
Yes. So there has always been an existing group called SAGE, at least for several months, and it has been using it. It is a futures trading group. I mean, you know, it's a currency trading group, and it's been using the WE protocol for the past several months, the winning entanglements, and it it'll continue to do that just for the next week or so until I get up and running with CAS, computer-aided scoring. So so then it will change into a CAS group within the next week or so.
Great. And
Yeah,
we'll have 4 or 5 groups going.
Yeah, there's some people that actually like that they get to try both protocols for some reason. So they're going to try WE for a week or two, and we're going to switch to CAS.
Great. Because the more groups we have and the more data we accumulate, we can really test this out. And as mentioned, this is developed in the lab for 30 years. Ed May was kind enough to give it to APP, and that was a lot of work on his part to get it to us. So, and we're very fortunate we're the only group that has it. Basically, in the remote viewing community, there are some other researchers who are using it, but we're sort of the only public group, I believe, that's using it.
Joe was excited about it. I mean,
Joe was excited about our having it, you mean? Or?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
And he said he loved the idea of a more kind of structured way to judge transcripts and such, and the computer would be a good dispassionate judge.
What was interesting in listening to the conversation a bit earlier with John and Chris was how significant the judging phase where you use the sliders still is. I mean, that's the place which is equivalent to the judging we do in all the other techniques. And listening to the conversation with issues, it just reminds me how important the analysis judging phase is for everybody. Whether you use sliders, whether you rank it with a TAR confidence scale, whether you rank it with you know, a 0 to 3 scale, or just say, hey, which is the best match. The judging is super critical, and it's like intimately related to the remote viewing. Those two are as strongly entangled as you can imagine. So you just reinforced that for me.
And one beautiful part of it is that although CAS is very complex to set up and has all this research behind it, it's very simple to run. And when Ed judges a session, you know, he says you shouldn't take more than 90 seconds to code this form. Well, I've been taking a little longer. I mean, we're not as familiar with it as he is, but it's really simple for the experimenter to code this thing, and really not a whole lot of work. And the viewer, of course, turns into a regular session, a short session, and so there's not much work there either because the computer is doing so much of the work. So, any other comments or questions on CAS at this point, the whole subject of CAS?
I would.
Go ahead, Deborah.
Sorry, you know, I've viewed about 45 of these or 50 so far.
Right.
Over the last 11 months, and these are extremely challenging. In fact, I think these have the ability to send the viewer over the edge, and that will remain to be seen. But I just had a question. I won't say more at this point. We're still learning, but I was interested, John, you showed a couple slides about the success that Ed has had in terms of he had some pretty impressive results. But I've only seen reference of, and maybe you could pull those slides back up. You had a couple there that you went through quickly. But I'm wondering really how many trials has Ed had besides for those initial, those 20 that you showed? Because I haven't really been able to find that in his papers.
They gave some figures in 2013, Ed and May did at APP, about their success in terms of trials, and they were up over 100, I think. But it's more than that because there's a group in Florida that's done an extensive number and apparently very successful, but they keep quiet about it, Joe said. And then, you know, they've done an awful lot with this guy, Clint, in Alabama, who makes the best money based on these. So I haven't seen a firm figure either. I don't know if anybody else has about the total run by Ed and Joe and also by others around the world.
Yeah, I'd really like to see that. And I just think that the idea of they have this idea that they're supposed to take 2 seconds or 2 minutes to do, and like what Chris was bringing up, I don't think just initial gestalts are going to do it with this. I mean, maybe they would. Maybe that's one way we could test it is, okay, well, each viewer has 5 minutes tops, and they have to stop their session after 5 minutes. You know, but I think a whole lot more is involved. This is extremely
Well,
Did you do quick sessions?
What's that?
Did you do quick sessions in the study that you did with those guys, or did you do?
No, I did really in depth ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know, we still don't know any. I haven't been told any results of anything. Supposedly, we'll know in September.
Yeah, John, the approach here is you're going to give them feedback right away, not like what happened with Deborah, correct?
Oh, absolutely. We give feedback for every day, every event that's done. Deborah, on your point about gestalts, I mean, Joe and Ed are both pretty clear that the initial gestalts should be sufficient for this, and I gather that Joe and Angela Ford and Nevin Lance, who are the 3 main viewers Ed uses, all produce rather short sessions. Not saying, you know, you sure have to, but I think that's they're convinced that the initial gestalts, that one session I did, for example, didn't have much detail in it. It did have gestalts. Of course, Joe himself can draw, you know, semi-photographic results, as we saw in the APP review on the locomotive and the building. But I don't even know if he does that for the CAS experiments he does with Ed. Of course, now they've moved on to liquid nitrogen, so that's a whole other ball of wax. But
Well, I'm not even sure how many of these Joe himself did. I'm not sure how many he's done really. I mean, I know he's definitely, you know, done some, but I know that he stopped doing these.
in the literature, it accounts some of the trials that he and the 2 other viewers did. You know, there in some of the articles that Ed May and his associates have written, there's some figures for how many trials they did for different protocols. But it's an evolving protocol over the last 30 years. Okay, any other comments or questions on CAS?
This is Stephen. I'm just wondering, do you ever retask the viewer when there's too sparse information, or is it always just a single shot?
I do single shot because that's what Ed May does, and I say I'm trying to emulate him as much as possible with CAS-O. And I don't think it's a good idea to retask. That's just my first initial reaction, though.
Fair enough.
Okay, anything else? If not, I guess, Marty, back to you.
Okay, just give it back to me for a second, because I'd like to introduce this one here. Here, I guess I can make myself.
How do I get back to you?
Yeah, I just did it.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to go on now to this live group predictions, and I'm going to turn this over to Carlos. But I just want to introduce this because this is sort of a good example on how we start new groups. I don't know where this is going to go, and I don't know. I think all of you have probably been following at least some of the discussions that were going on, and you can see there are lots of different ideas being put out, which came out of the initial proposal that Carlos made. And one of the keys is to bring this to fruition, to actualize it. It's going to take a general manager to basically clearly define the protocol, and we saw that develop over the discussion list. Someone to take on the responsibility of general manager, which is just that, really it's group manager. So manage a specific group, and then get viewers to join him or her. So the process we're about to go through now will hopefully result in all of that. So let me turn this over to Carlos. And you should have the screen now, Carlos.
Okay. Just a second. Hello, everybody.
Hi, Carlos.
Good afternoon. Hello, my name is Carlos. Many of you don't know me because I'm basically new to the APP group. I'm based in Brazil, and well, I'm going to be making a short presentation along with Mark.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Hello, Mark.
Nice to meet you, Carlos, by the way.
Yes. About the University of Colorado attempt to predict the Dow Jones Industrial Average using ARV. Let's see, for those of you who have already heard of this story and are wondering why listen to this, or what could I learn, you know, from a bunch of lucky first-time untrained viewers, I think it's going to be relevant. It's going to be relevant because it has, you know, some basic elements that are sometimes forgotten in how we configure the groups and how we create our group models. I'm going to go straight to the presentation. I hope to have an open discussion afterwards. It's going to be very short. I assume many of you are familiar with it. And I hope that we are able to reach conclusions, you know, that help us to implement some ideas that, well, that lead us, not sure if to replicate what they did, but at least to improve our results. You know, I heard you talking about CAS. I was fascinated, you know, never heard about it, just saw a few emails there talking up and down about CAS. Now that I saw my first lines about CAS, I was blown away. I mean, it's really impressive what can be done in the sphere of judging, but there are other spheres as well that should be considered, and these are spheres where, you know, the APP has some problems, and I'm talking about, you know, groups that initially have 20 people and then only 2 people end up doing predictions, or 3 people. You know, there is no long-term commitment. There is a lack of certain critical elements that I'm sure would help, you know, would help reach those hit rates that we are really looking forward to hit. Okay, I'm going to start with the presentation. Let's see the experiment. For those who know about it, 10 inexperienced remote viewers, 9 university students, and 1 professor. It was part of a course, you know, Edges of Science. And the viewers was basically asked to remote view a target during the class. So a class setting was used to do the experiments. And the viewers were given 5 minutes to describe on paper what they would see as feedback. Very much in line with what you just were saying about the CAS protocol. Okay. The protocol is standard binary ARV with 2 common target photos for everybody, for each trial. The targets were selected from a pool of pre-qualified pictures, and the only criterion was orthogonality for the pictures, or for the images. The targets were printed and sealed before the trials. And some of them were marked as up targets, the others were marked as down targets. Oops, sorry. the feedback. Standard feedback, you know, before the next trial, the viewers would be given the feedback. Okay, this is an example of a transcript. Mark has a lot to say about this because he you know, we're talking a lot in the group about, you know, the quality of the data and the confidence, you know, of the data with which they were working with. And this is an example, and Mark, you can go in. This is an example of probably their best session. You know, we have here hamster, and we have a little rabbit. We can see on the page. No? And the rest of the sessions, as we will see in the results, are much weak. This will be another example of a transcript. You know, the globe was chosen here. Just a second.
And if you're wondering if those words scribbled on that session are saying the colors, was noting colors of green, orange, yellow, and white. So that could have gone to the keyboard, the orange and yellow, obviously, but they did make the correct decision with going with that circular globe shape. Also, there's that rectangle, which could be indicative of the keyboard, but they did with this decide to lean with the prediction side of the globe, which ended up being correct.
Exactly, yes. Okay, the investing vehicle, well, was basically options, Dow Jones Industrial Average options. They would sell the options and actualize any loss or gains. The sessions were done before the day before the investment was made in the market. Okay, let's go to the results, because this is a very interesting slide or table. We can see, the first thing we can see here, well, they did 7 trials. They managed to hit 7 times out of 7. And the first thing we can see here is the scoring scale is not the TARG scale or any scale we are used to. They use a 1, 2, 3 scale to evaluate the correlation between target and script, transcript. And as we can see here, we have a lot of 1s which would correspond to the weak correlations, and very few 3s.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I was going to point out, if you look at the last 4 trials, in total, they gave out essentially 0 passes over 38 sessions. There is an M rating that you see in the description below of how they scored, which would indicate matching, which I assume is kind of the same as a pass in our books, of at least the kind of TARG scale. But here you have 38 sessions over those last 4 trials, so most of the study where 0 passes were given out. And obviously that's, I note that as important because obviously in the TARG scale, you don't see that. I mean, with TARG scale, you're operating at least 50% passes. You're not going to go 0 passes in 38 sessions. Also with that, those last 4 trials, I counted, and they gave out of the 38 sessions in those last 4 trials. There's 31 sessions that were scored with a 1, the lowest rating. So 31 out of 38 sessions are scored with a 1. But yet they successfully made hits with those 4 trials. So they're working with essentially the implication is their way of judging was working in a way that was more handicapped to accepting noise and signal than what the TARG scale allows us to acknowledge through sessions. The premise almost seems to be that psi is readily available and much more present than perhaps what the TARG scale allows us to see, and it's maybe something to do with our intellectual sides as judges, to bridging the gap between our psychic sides to realizing this more. You know, it's such a case, I think, where we have the disposition to thinking to make this a reality. We have to get our psychic skills better and better to prove it to our intellectual sides. Perhaps it's also a case of our intellectual sides kind of coming down a bit and to bridge that gap to accepting psi signal in noise more readily. And yeah, it's just my comments there.
Now, I have a question on this. The fact of the ones is very interesting because you basically force them to make a choice. And so when I see a up 1, does that mean that the other match to the other picture was basically a 0? In other words, an up of 1 was the better of the 2, but it was still weak. Is that how I'm to interpret that?
I believe you're correct, and I actually reached out to Christopher Carson Smith, who conducted this experiment. I wrote to him last night, and I was very happy that he responded. I want to ask him about judging. He seemed enthused. I told him about our group and that we have interest in recreating his experiment. He didn't respond much because he's on a mobile phone at the time. He said that he'd respond to me later today when he gets back on his computer, and so I'm excited to ask him more questions about judging, such as you bring up.
Okay, but so a 1 is relatively weak, and yet it was this. Basically, it was the strongest of the 2. That's how I should interpret this. And then
yes.
Okay, interesting. That's another judging technique.
Yes. So if we have a look at the 7 columns, something interesting as well is that every time we get every time we look at the highest score, you know, the highest score is always correct as well. That's something that we discussed, Mark and I.
Yes.
A few emails, yes. So we have, you know, in the first column we have the highest score is a 2, the 2 are correct. In the second column we have a 3. We have a 3 in the third. You know, it's we have a 2, a single 2 in the fourth. The highest score is always correct. You know, this follows the maxim that truth speaks louder, if you want. Not sure, but it's a curiosity that we could see in this table.
It's a kind of reinforcement. It's a kind of reinforcement, isn't it? If you're looking for like signal noise, you have 2 different ways of doing the judging, and they're both leading to the same conclusion. That gives you more confidence.
Yes, exactly. When they talk about the judging, you know, they emphasize that they had no protocol, that each judge was, you know, doing the scoring and the judging, following his own subjective, you know, way of doing things. So they didn't seem to have much, you know, protocol structure around the whole thing. Nevertheless, they were able, you know, it's amazing when you look at the results, even the individual results. I'm not talking about the 7 out of 7. No, if you look, for instance, at column 5, you know, they all were correct but 1. Column 4, they all were correct but 1. Column 1, they all were correct. You know, it's amazing. You know, column 7. They all were correct but 3. You know, something else is going on, in my opinion, here. It might be the first-time effect, as Catherine pointed out. It might be that it is done in a class setting and they are all focused, you know, on the task at hand. And this is, you know, a central part of the class they're taking. I'm not very sure, but I think this is something we should look into because it could help us, you know, to model or to find new group models and to try to improve through that way the hit rates we have. Okay.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that. What essentially brings us here to, you know, to discussing making a live group and exploring the group effect is our observation of how this study, they went 7 for 7, making predictions. Also, our Las Vegas APP groups have functioned with a higher accuracy rate, seemingly, than our online APP work. And also, people observed through remote viewing classes seemingly better accuracy. And so we're trying to identify variables of what separates us, separates online APP work from those groups. And obviously, the most obvious of them is that those variables is that they are all present together. They are all, they all did viewing at the same time and function more physically or somehow together more so. But also, there's the variable that these other groups are more successful. They were larger. They had than what we usually operate with. So, yeah, both of those variables are obviously key here, and that's what brings a lot of what we're trying to bring into a group protocol right now.
Okay. Any question about this table? No. Okay.
I have a question. Well, it's actually of Marty. Marty, do you have the same results as this table, or do you have times when the high CR is like a 6.0 is incorrect? My impression is you do have high CRs that are not correct in a lot of times.
I have seen, unfortunately, I have seen that. You get this great transcript, and it'll turn out to be wrong, but whether or not that happens sometimes. And again, I have to get into the detailed statistics to see what percentage of the time that happens. But my feeling is that once you get above a 5 on a TARG scale, once a person judges at a 5 or above, it's all about the same. In other words, I have not seen 7s be that much better than the 5s. But there aren't that many 7s either, so you don't have a good statistical basis yet to conclude that.
Also, just to introduce into the discussion, for those that didn't see it, but Catherine also wrote that maybe it's not a first-time effect. Maybe it has to do with the fact, if it's a fact, that all these folks were engineering students and maybe they have a particular aptitude for this. Anyway, it's another variable to look at. Who were these students? Were they all in the same majors, same class? What?
In regards to that, I'm curious, Marty, you showed a slide at the APP 2014 Las Vegas conference, which kind of showed how remote viewer accuracy function over time. I think your slides demonstrated that there's a first-time effect, but there's goes down, the accuracy goes down after that. But then viewers go back up over time, back to where their first-time effect was, and beyond. Is that correct?
I've shown something like that. Hal Puthoff showed that many, many years ago. So that's generally when you do get a good first-time effect, there just seems to be a dip. I mean, I see it so often that it needs to be understood. It's almost like you could view it as a test. The subconscious saying, how serious are you about this? It tests how you handle the misses, but then, yes, it seems to come back up, and I'll go even further. I believe that there's no reason you can't get it even higher than the first time kind of effect. In other words, I believe you can get better and better at it.
And in regards to there being a first-timer effect, or these, the notion that these students somehow are just a collection of, by coincidence, of very gifted psychics, I point to that these, the last 4 trials, as I mentioned before, where there's 31 out of 38 sessions, 31 sessions were given the bottom ranking of 1, noting that this, the sessions weren't that remarkable.
I know this has some other kinds of, I think, important information for us in there. It's our job to integrate it all into putting together better groups. I would like to share, since you've now sort of asked about the first time. Notice not everybody has it.
I certainly think that
right. In the first trial, it looks like you've got 3 people who didn't go in the same direction, and they were even ranked as 2s, but they got misses. I think in this case, and the thing which I'm also agreeing with is that when you get a group of people together, there's just a different energy level, which is similar to the first-time effect, in that there's interest, there's more fun, there's just the psychology of doing it is different and maybe more positive than when you're by yourself doing it week after week. And I think that's part of the dip effect. You're doing it week after week in the same way. And I have stated, and I still believe, that individual viewers need to recognize that and take it on. There's no reason, once you recognize that you can't get into a space where you now feel good about it. I mean, I think Joe McMonagle does that. He says it now takes him 5 minutes. It used to take him 45 minutes. So I think you can get over all of this, but especially for those of us, you know, who are doing other things and stuff like that, for whatever reason, getting together in a group, I think, encourages it. And that is, I think, a very viable hypothesis.
Another point back on that graph, Carlos, if you might. To me, I'd like to see more of the sessions that they did. You pointed out that that rabbit was the best one. To me, this probably supports Joe McMonagle's insistence that even for beginning viewers, the initial gestalts, which may be words but are often drawings, are always accurate. And that's how he does it in his simple method that he demonstrated in scoring at APP 2000. Yeah, like here, so this circle, semicircle, that initial gestalt was enough, apparently, to make them choose that one on the right. So I would like to see what Christopher Carson Smith has to say about that, too, and maybe that's something you guys can ask him.
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
Were the viewers all together when they did this? Were they all like sitting in a classroom together? Did they all have the same?
From what I understand, it was Carlos probably read this too. That was essentially the first 5 minutes of a class. That's I'm not sure what the class was, but yeah, the first 5 minutes of some class that they took to do their sessions all together.
So that might lend itself to what's going to be talked about in a few minutes here, right? About a group starting where people are going to do it together in an interactive level.
That's part of what brings us here, yeah.
Cool.
Okay, I'm having problems with the computer. Don't know what's going on with the slides. Okay. Okay, the financial outcome, they made some money, they made some serious money. They were up $16,000 after trial 5, starting with 10,000. Trial 6 and 7 were days of small market changes, and when you're dealing with options, that usually means you don't make any money. On trial 7, they had, I'm not sure what kind of problems. They had an issue, a timing issue. I think they didn't sell at the end of the day. They let the options run for the next day, and they ended up losing $12,000. Anyway, without this timing error, if they had been able to close their position as they were supposed to do, they would have made $38,000, which is a huge return in a span of 2 weeks. Over, it's a 400% return. It's enormous. And doing this in the settings of a class that were taking, in 7 days. They probably had three classes per week. So it's really interesting. It's really interesting to see the level of success they have. It's astonishing. Okay. Why was this trial so successful? This is what they have to say about it. You know, they mentioned that in their conclusions that, well, the number of viewers could be one of the reasons. You know, this is basically prediction markets theory. You know, it's the wisdom of the crowds. In the end, you know, if you are able to gather together sufficient number of people, they will be able to predict with uncanny accuracy things that even experts are unable to predict. In this case, we're not talking about huge amounts of people. We're talking about a different type of data, you know. But you know, we're talking about 10 people, and that it's quite a lot for ARV standards. We are used to, you know, people, one person doing repeated trials, group of 3-4 people. In the end, they mentioned that it is not clear that the perfect success rate could be maintained during a longer trial. And they're talking about the long-term effect. Yes. Okay. This is what they have to say about it. Here I would like to have an open discussion. We're having it already, you know, about what we can learn about this. Marty mentioned that well, one of the things we should look into is the variables related to how the groups are created, and you know, their feelings, their alignment, and you know, the kind of energy or psychological effect that is pervading these kind of groups. Something else that we may learn is that it might not be necessary to, you know, as it has already been mentioned, to work with a scale as a TARC scale, or the SRI scale, as some people call it. You know, these people were using really low-tech technology to judge the transcripts, and it is amazing to see how accurate they were, not only as a group doing the trials, but individually. You know, the percentage of success is enormous as individuals, and of course as a group as well. I don't know if any of you has any conclusion that we could add to this.
Well,
hello.
Yeah, I just want to bring up, as I mentioned to Christopher Smith, who's behind this experiment, that I think obviously the implications of them going perfect like this are staggering, and so. It's a shame, essentially, that this was done 4 years ago and no one's attempted to reproduce it or go further with exploring it. And so it's kind of been disregarded by the scientific community, I guess, and you could say, take away from that, and also academia. And so if we want to see it reproduce, it's kind of up to the public or the people. If in terms of that, in terms of people, if APP, a group of people are committed to ARV, aren't going to reproduce it, I think we're the last gardens. No one's going to attempt to try to explore this and the results further. So that's where I'm coming from. They have a basis that's been proven to work, and I'd like to see that explored further. I think it's earned its merit to be explored further.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe let me make a comment. I want to see it explored too, because I do see the group being important. However, I just want to add another little angle to this. We've had lots of other successes. Maybe I can try to find. I had a guy who did something like 16 in a row, ignoring passes at the beginning. Now, this was actually an experienced viewer. He did remarkably well, and then over the long term, he came down to 65% by the time he got to like 200 trials. The point I am making is I think we need to keep in our minds what the long-term objective is, because I believe that's what we're about. can you set up a long-term procedure that will maintain this kind of hit rate? Because, look, we all know precognition is real. The idea is to apply it. We're past the point where we're applying it like for academic reasons. We want to apply it in a way which becomes sort of normal and standard and something which you can integrate into your life and make money regularly. And so that's the kind of protocol we're looking for. I mean, I don't think you should come from a position that this is the only time that we've ever had 80% success in a study, because that's not true. What is true is over the long term, hundreds of trials, we've never seen anything like 80%. And at least in my mind, that's what I'm looking for, is a protocol setting up a dynamic. And I think a dynamic where people are with each other could be extremely helpful for getting this for the long term.
Yes, I agree with you, Marty, and this is what we're going to be talking in a few minutes. It's you know, the different ways that we could tackle this to try to reach that over 65%, you know, long-term hit rate. Yes. Okay.
80% long-term hit rate, right?
Yes, over 65. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Right.
You know, 70 would be great as well.
Hey, first 70, then 75, and then 80. And then who knows?
Exactly. Okay. Let's see. Well, what are we planning to do about it? It's a bit what we're talking. Let's see. Well, besides everything else that the APP is doing, you know, they daily and continuously, we're working on two small ideas or two new ideas to, you know, to tackle this, you know, this psychological, you know, atmospheric, you know, group angle that we've been mentioning. Oops, sorry. Okay, and we've got a proposal for autumn. We're going to launch, or the APP is going to launch live group sessions. We don't know yet who are going to be the managers. John Knowles is mentioned here, as is Igor, but you know, it's still it isn't decided yet. What I can tell you is that they currently working, you know, defining the most suitable methodology to be able to do live group sessions, and we're really looking forward to set up a new protocol to you know, to try to replicate Colorado Uni and other live successes that you know, the APP had, like Las Vegas. Okay, the second project is a new group, you know, that's search to explore new group models. I'm not going to talk much about it because we're still working on it, but a presentation will be made in mid-September. We are defining a whole protocol for how the group is going to be created, for how we're going to be dealing with transcripts, how we're going to be dealing with each other, how are we going to be dealing with wagering, even how we're going to be dealing with success. So it's a new approach that is going to try to be a bit more holistic in how we see and treat the group. I can't tell you much more about these two initiatives, but beginning of September, we'll be able to do a presentation for both of them, and everybody in the APP will be invited to participate in them. Don't know if you have any questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
I thought that it was Igor and you, Carlos, and Mark, maybe, who would be defining and coming to some way to do these live sessions. I don't have any particular experience or history with them. I probably have as much as anybody, but I'm quite busy with CAS, and I thought that maybe you three or two, or however you want to structure it, were going to be taking command there.
John, it's something just to be discussed. I mentioned you because you proposed a very nice protocol for live sessions, and I think we're going to be working on that. You know, and the mere fact that you propose that, you know, makes you part of that group. It's probably going to be Igor, Mark, and myself working on it. You're right, but you know, your feedback is always important, and you probably have much more experience with live group sessions than we do. But I understand what you're saying. You're very busy with CAS, and you can't be organizing this too. The second group, the Toledo group. Igor is going to be involved as well. Mark probably is going to be involved as well if he wants, and I will be involved, and anybody else that wants to work on this. I'm already working on an action plan for a proposal, first, you know, a draft, and this will be discussed. You know, will be discussed between us before proposing it to the group as a whole.
Carlos, I have to tell you, I am so excited about this that this is such a wonderful way to start a new group. If there's anything that I can do to help, you let me know, okay? This Toledo group, you know, you obviously have in your mind some ideas, and it's clear that you know how to organize something like this. And yes, when you're ready, you'll send out an email to the whole app group, and hopefully, in fact, I suspect you will get a lot of people who will want to join you, just sort of based on your whole attitude here. So that's terrific.
Well, thank you, Marty. Thank you. That's it, basically. That's what I don't know if you have something else to add, Mark.
No, I think I've discussed what I wanted to, points I wanted to make. Thank you so much, Carlos, for your presentation. You did an excellent job. Just want to say that.
Thanks to you.
Okay, well then maybe let me say one other thing about this live group session. You're putting out maybe two and maybe one group. You know, there is another possibility. The fact that it's live and that you get a bunch of people who are excited doing it,
yeah. Yes,
may be much more important than the protocol itself. In fact, I've often said that about protocols. I've come to the conclusion, you know, I'm big on WE right now, but I don't think it's the protocol per se. I think it happens to be a good learning vehicle, and that a good viewer, you know, you get Joe McMonagle, do you think he really cares about the protocol? He's going to do great viewing no matter what. And yes, you want to do all the things you can to maximize that for, you know, kind of the rest of us until we become Joe McMonagles. What I'm saying here is, with respect to the live group sessions, it may be that we can rotate through different protocols. You know, you guys, I know you sort of had ideas, but you don't have the time. Maybe what we ought to do is encourage something. I'm even thinking I may want to do a live WE, make a modification, because I also like the idea of, while it's live, having everybody have the same targets. Now, I would do it with 2 targets, but that's okay. For one time, we can do 2 targets, and maybe somebody else would like to do a standard binary ARV where everybody has the same target. And we'll see how many people we can get. Okay,
Yeah,
so all I'm saying is I like the idea of doing these live group sessions, but it doesn't have to be attached to a specific protocol. You could have multiple protocols.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I think the main variables I just want to see, better incorporated into APP are the live, group dynamics and having a larger number of participants. I think those are important to try to explore. It seems like there's basis for those 2 things leading to better success or accuracy.
Let me ask you this, because in the past we've done something similar to this. You saw in one email Alexis actually alluded to the fact when we did for many weeks in a row, we were focusing on judging. And we had specific viewers assigned to do sessions, and then a whole bunch of people, probably as many as 10 at some point in time. John, you were around then, and Teresa and several others. We would get into independently then judging each of their sessions, and then we would compare. So they would do judging independently. The question I'm asking is, that brought the group together at the level of the judging, but the viewing was done before, so each viewer got to do that in their own environment. Do you think that would still count in your mind as a live group session?
That's a question we have to explore. It's how the judging is done. How if the group sessions are all done live. I think that's what we're aiming for, to have everyone just kind of remote view. Give it like 5 or 10 minutes or whatever to remote view in a webinar, and then I think the idea is to have people scan their sessions in and send them to a judge, a designated judge, or have self-judging like through WE, like you mentioned. If that's something you want to explore, that'd be awesome. But yeah, I don't know. I can't really answer.
Okay. Well, you see, the other variable here is to have remote viewers do their sessions first. Might be interesting. But sure, I would put that. I may very well want to do something like that and propose it to the group and see if I can get a live group session going. And I think for now we ought to just leave it that way. Anybody who's got the energy to make a proposal for a live group session is welcome to do so. Maybe we should just leave it at that for now.
Mm-hmm. I did want to add one thing, an outlier that some people here may not have heard about, but I know some of us have. If we're talking about multiple viewers or multiple recipients, that experiment that Paul O'Connor and then Buchanan did on Irish radio, where they had listeners, I guess, log in or somehow convey to them what sound they were going to hear after the event. And I think they had 20 to 30,000 people taking part, and they had a hit. So here we have an extremely high number of participants. We're talking 7 to 10 in our groups. I don't know if podcasts or some other Paracast radio would be interested. Anyway, this is an outlier idea that if you want to get even more people involved, there's probably ways to do that with the internet.
Yes.
Again, that's just a far out idea.
Okay.
Yes. As a matter of fact, I think we should, in the live sessions, we shouldn't focus so much on creating a live sessions group, but on creating periodic group sessions. And these group sessions could be exploratory in many cases. We could try with sounds. We could try with different protocols. We could try uploading the script, the transcript before the session. There are many options that could be explored, because in the end, what is really exciting is the fact that a group gathered together to make a prediction. that is really the core of the live group sessions. And it doesn't really matter if it is done using sounds, if it is uploading before. It's all that should be explored. I wouldn't, we'll talk about it, but I wouldn't focus so much on creating groups, but on getting participation for these live group sessions, on making sure that people are excited and that, they don't want to miss that session because, it's going to be bloody exciting to be there, making the prediction.
I think that's exactly the idea of the live group sessions. I agree totally. And in fact, let's start doing that. I think in spite of everything else that's going on, I think I may very well want to try one, maybe set one up, and then just because none of the rest of you, at least here, has volunteered to do one, just to force it all the way through to the end, get some people to come and be excited about it, and then hopefully someone else will pick up with their idea and take the next one.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Very good. Okay, thank you very much, Carlos and Mark and all the rest of it.
My pleasure.
Let me change presenters back to me.
I'll just say that I fully support that idea, and it's great for building community among everybody, and it'll be a good experiment. And yeah, we could all use a little more fun in our lives. So. It's great to be around you guys too. So I like the idea of us chatting and joking before we do our sessions, and everything that's going on in the discussion group regarding this is pretty cool.
Yes.
Thanks.
I wish I had more time to help with it.
I know. It's the same way. Okay, thank you, Scott.
Okay,
very good.
Guys, I have to leave. I have many things to do. I'm moving to Spain in a few days.
Carlos, we're just so happy you joined us for this much.
Thank you, Carlos.
Yeah. You take care.
Yeah.
We all have to integrate this with our lives, and yes.
Great.
Okay, let's go on to this free will and predeterminism and time issue. I've got 2 slides I'd like to put out to start the discussion, and basically this is my point of view on this, and then it's a discussion. Being in this whole area, it's discussions which come up all the time, over and over, and let me start it off. I see a way of looking at this which for me makes the most sense, is this whole issue of non-local cause and effects, which involve the past, present, and the future. That's like kind of another way of looking at this same subject for the following reason. Local, and now I want to define the difference between local and non-local for you, but it's the idea of locality in terms of cause and effects that leads to this idea of predeterminism. Now, what do I mean by local? Local is the idea that, as I'm talking right now, sound waves are going out and propagating from my mouth out in time. And it starts in a given location and it propagates out in time and space. Einstein said the same thing about light, and information could never travel faster than the speed of light. That would be the fastest that any mass could travel. That would be the fastest anything could go. That's the idea of locality. Non-locality is sort of says, nope, information is around all the time. I want to show you a quote on what this local, the idea that things have an original starting point, there's a cause, and the effects propagate out in time, which Einstein believed to his dying day. Remember, Einstein was the one who said there were spooky effects at a distance. He had real problems with quantum mechanics. He felt that quantum mechanics was missing something because he understood that the implications were the spooky effects at a distance. This is a quote from Einstein. "Everything is determined, the beginning as well as the end, by forces over which we have no control. It is determined for the insect as well as for the star. Human beings, vegetable, or cosmic dust, we all dance to a mysterious tune intoned in the distance by an invisible piper." He believed, just like if you take a ball and throw it, F equal ma, classical mechanics, which has gotten us very far, by the way. You know, nothing wrong with classical mechanics. We got to the moon and back. We've done all kinds of amazing things with classical mechanics. He believed that that's the way the universe worked. He's wrong. Quantum mechanics has indeed been verified over and over again. The very experiment which he set up, which thought would find a flaw in quantum mechanics, was part of the fact that it's in fact been proved, and all scientists accept quantum mechanics as being a very good description of what's going on in our universe at the level of the very small. Okay, second slide. I believe precognition is probably the best example of non-locality involving pure information in time versus the quantum mechanical physical objects in time. Now let me explain that. Quantum mechanics really describes physical objects. It doesn't have a whole lot to say about what I would call pure information. If you think about what precognition is dealing with, precognition deals with getting information from what we call, thinking about time in a linear way, from the future. So precognition is a wonderful example of non-locality. We are getting information from the future, which Einstein would say is impossible because of his normal consideration about the way time works in a linear local way. Now, physical objects obey quantum mechanics, and they actually obey non-locality as well. See, that's the beautiful connection here. Light waves going off in different directions, okay? They will, in fact, communicate instantly. Physical objects. Well, what we're doing with precognition is showing that information can be connected through time. All information in time is connected. That's what non-locality seems to be applying. Everything is connected. Information is really experienced in terms of consciousness in the now. You only get to experience it in the now, but somehow it's shared with all of your other nows. And each of us, and this is where free will comes in, each of us has free will to create our personal nows, which entangle effects, past, present, and future. So we get to entangle with all the other nows, and this issue of cause and effect. We know that the effect of feedback, the effect that we see our target in the future, is affecting my remote viewing session. I mean, that's really remarkable from the perspective of cause and effect. We now have retro cause, which more and more even scientists, but slowly are starting to have to take into account. I went, and I just have it here so, you know, you can look at it if you want to, more details about this, because I've been forced to think about this having spent so much time in this area. So that's my perspective on this. Everybody else jump in.
Hi, Marty. Hi, everyone. It's Laura here.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, how are you? Again, sorry for being late. I had some problems with my computer. So, regarding what Marty said, the way I see this non-locality is basically in the now. We are from my AI background and understanding of quantum physics at the moment, we are receiving overlapping mixture of information from multiple timelines, because I believe that in the future the timelines bifurcate. So there are alternate realities, and each alternate reality, because we do feedback, carries with it at some point in the future the signal. And so this non-locality, I see it as in a probabilistic sense. You know, if you have a majority of 7 out of 10 timelines carrying the information about a photo for outcome 1, and you have 3 carrying information for the photo of outcome 2, then you would receive a probabilistic interference. And if you can make out the majority signal, either outcome 1 or outcome 2, that's where the information is. So my sense is, from the future we are perceiving a probabilistic signal, and if a specific outcome is more likely to happen, we are perceiving it in terms of conditional probabilities. So how does the future unfold as we stand now? So that's, you know, that's my take on it.
But now wait, let me ask you this. The future is sending back probabilistic information? Is that what you're saying?
No. So each possible future has us seeing feedback on that particular timeline, and we are dealing with, my understanding is we are dealing with an infinite bifurcation of timelines. And we are doing basically, we are receiving a conditional probability, maybe an integral over a continuous set of timelines, each one.
Okay, I think I get it. This is what's called the multiple universe. You're basically...
That's right.
Okay, let me ask you this then. You do agree that your experience a day from now will happen in only one way? Your feedback will happen in only one way. And so of all of those possibilities, only one happens. And it seems to me that that one that happens has a extraordinarily stronger sort of characteristic to it than all the others which didn't happen. And that's why I have a problem with the multiple universe theory, because I've heard people say that all those other ones in fact exist, and that's where I have a lot of trouble with that. See, there's something special about the one that happened. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I totally understand where you're coming from, Marty, but it will be difficult to disprove the multiple universes theory, as well as it will be difficult to prove. You know, there has been work done at the Farsight Institute, where they viewed an earthquake in the future. I don't know, they viewed in March for July, and they saw a 7 magnitude earthquake, whereas in fact an earthquake did happen in July, but it was a 3.3 or something much lower. So their conclusion was they saw an alternate reality where their sample they draw from a single timeline, and that one was at the peak of a probability distribution. So that evidence seems to suggest multiple realities.
That's an excuse for not remote viewing right. I do, and Joe says it over and over again. When you get a miss, just accept it. Let me tell you something else, and I haven't thought about this for a while, and I'm glad I have, and I want to dig out a paper. Look, I understand that the multiple universe theory gives all the same predictions as all the other quantum mechanical versions, so I do understand that. However, I happen to think that quantum mechanics may have a slight nonlinearity that may be associated with it to make it exactly right. In fact, I doubt if it'll ever be exactly right, but it might be missing something. And there was a paper written by somebody who concluded just that. That if you add a very small nonlinear term, one which we haven't yet been able to detect because it's so small, that some of these other models no longer become viable. There was also another fellow who said that his theory, Kramer at the University of Washington, he believes that his model, based on other arguments, is better than the multiple universe theory. Let me just say, we can go on and argue, and not argue, discuss this stuff because it's really, really interesting. Bottom line, what matters in our context is that you do have a sense that you are part of the creation process of that future. I think this is very important. I've had people say they think you can change your future. I don't believe you can change your future. Your now moment, a day from now, is going to be whatever it is. Your feedback experience for your coordinate is going to be whatever it is. You're going to see one specific feedback picture. And to get the sense that you're part of the creation process, to have a remote viewing session which is entangled with that feedback session, is rather incredible. I mean, to really take that in, that the universe is not linear only, that there are entanglements where causes in the future can in fact influence you in the past, is rather remarkable. And I don't care so much about the specifics of the model as I do the implications that we already know, that we live in a non-local world. And I think people need to take that in because it's rather incredible that you can have a backwards cause and effect, if you will.
Well, to that I can only ask you this, Marty. Do you believe in the, Minkowski space model, space-time continuum model?
Again, when you get to the specifics of a model, yeah, hey, it explains, I think it goes all the way to giving the same quantum mechanical equations. It's those quantum mechanical equations, and now all the experiments that have verified it, that lead to the fact that we need to take in and change ourselves as a society to accept that the universe is non-local. Our world is non-local. I mean, 1,000 years from now, hopefully 100 years from now, we're going to look back and say, how did we really think that things can only go forward in time? That we cannot, in fact, be participants. You see, notice we didn't change the past by what we did with our feedback session. they're entangled all along. And we do get to create that. I mean, I'm participating in creating this webinar with my very experience of it. So are you. And that's connected now throughout all time. So when anybody asks me, you know, and I'm a scientist, and I've spent time looking at all these different models, but do I think one is better than the other? I don't care. I don't know what better means. I'm looking for a model that'll help us improve precognition. And all I can come up with is the implications of non-locality, the implications of entanglement through space and time, the entanglement of all consciousness, which we see over and over again. That's the most important, I think, consequence of all of these models, is that we need to take in the fact that we live in a different world. So one model versus another model, I don't care. Plus they all seem to be giving the same basic quantum mechanical model, which has, I love it when you think about the square root of -1 is in all of them. What in the hell does the square root of -1 mean? Somehow that is connected in some way, I think, to consciousness that we just don't intellectually understand. I don't want to go on and on. I've said enough.
Okay, thank you, Marty.
I think we should hear from somebody else. Tamara, what do you think? I think you wrote something about free will and all that. Some of the rest of you, give us some input here. It's certainly an interesting subject.
It is. I have an afternoon lull. I'm listening, but I'm not going to say much.
Yeah.
I get real excited about the discussing the ideas of consciousness. So I'm listening attentively and look forward to when we have more discussions. Not in the middle of the afternoon when I pass out. It happens all the time. I'm so sorry.
No.
I'm going to go back on mute and just listen, and thank you guys all.
You see, Laura, I don't, it looks like, why don't we only have 5 more minutes, so unless somebody else wants to say, let me just say that as a scientist, of course, I'm interested in all these different models, and I follow them much less than I used to. But I really believe and science is missing, is the implications of all this. I mean, the implications are just incredible. And what we're doing with precognition will hopefully open up more and more people's minds to the fact that the universe is indeed non-local, that we are living our lives in a non-local fashion. So stuff I'm going to do in the future is influencing my life now. And it's kind of cool to know that, because that means that I can, as I get smarter and smarter, I can get even better and better, and that should influence my life. I have a pretty good life now, I think, and I think that comes partially from stuff I'm going to do in the future, as I just get more knowledgeable and wiser. And that's kind of people just don't think that way. Laura, go ahead. You have the last word here on this subject.
I can only absolutely agree with what you're saying, Marty, and I'm just a bit maybe too focused on the precise nature of trying to put things into a formula or a framework. To me, at least right now, precognition seems and feels like, as we look in 3D ahead of us and see what's ahead, precognition is like looking ahead in 4D space or in Minkowski space and see what's ahead there. And basically, our intention is to orientate ourselves so that we can choose our destiny and our future based on what we see as precognition. So we can I guess what I'm trying to say is precognition, at least to me, it feels like looking ahead in 3D, looking ahead in 4D, and getting a sense of what's ahead, and that's absolutely staggering. It will put the planet on a different trajectory. It will be an informed trajectory through the space-time continuum. It's like a sonar. I don't know how to put it. You know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you know, in terms of the implications and everything, we're the same. Okay, look, Laura, it's terrific, and you know, all these discussions do, I hope, is get us motivated back to do our precognition, right? But I think it does help put it in a context where it feels comfortable, because as you do this, you do have to get to a point where you feel comfortable with all of this. And some people don't. Some people have problems with that, but they need to take it on, or sometimes they just leave because they're just uncomfortable with it. Okay, is there anything else anybody wants to bring up? We do have our 2 hours here, but you know, we can. If there are any other subjects that somebody was saving, I would certainly like them to at least raise it now. Okay. Look, I thank you all for coming, and let's just keep precogging and having fun. I do believe that's got to be part of this. If you're not having fun, you should be doing something else. So all of you take care, enjoy, and keep precogging, and I will close this webinar now.
Thank you so much, Marty. It was very informative.
Good day, all.
Thank you all. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Enjoy.
Bye.
Everyone. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.